Hello, and welcome to Write Hive 2026. I'm Samantha Bryant, and I get to be your moderator tonight for this fantastic panel on monstrous love. We'll be talking about monster romance as a growing genre. So, to kick us off, I thought I'd ask our fabulous panelists to introduce themselves. And as you do, maybe just tell us a little bit about how you relate to monster romance. Like, do you write it? Do you read it? Have you never heard of it before and are wondering why you're on this panel? So, Raven, why don't you go first?
Hi, everyone. I'm Raven Belasco. I write a vampire series called Blood and Ancient Scrolls series. It's technically not romance, but there is a lot of monstrous loving that happens within the books. So I do have things to say on the matter. But there is a difference between the romance genre and the paranormal romance genre and horror and other things like that. So I think that's a really interesting thing that I hope we get a chance to talk about.
Excellent. Britta?
Yes, hi, I'm Viola Brown. I also go as Britta, and I am an author of Monster Romance. I write the Camp Cryptid series about adult humans and monsters at a band camp in Appalachia. And I write the Beer Hall Brides about magical Oktoberfest and the German folklore characters that inhabit the world. Kind of fairy tale, mostly monstrous.
All right. Mel?
Yeah, I'm Mel Eden. I go by Mel, and my genre mix is adult queer urban fantasy monster romance. So I have several series, ones with dragons, ones with vampires, a merfolk, and another novella series that is around a magical resort. So where all kinds of shenanigans happen. And my pronouns are she, her.
How about you, Stephanie?
Hi, I'm Stefanie Contreras, and I also am a big fan of monster romance. Actually, I started out writing fantasy, sci-fi, and someone said like you should write what you read, and I was reading more monster romance than the genres I was originally writing. So I decided it was time to pick up the pen and actually write in the genre that I spend so much time with. So I started writing under the pen name Nyx Coronado. And I have a vampire romance, The Dampier's Acolyte, but I also have a short story in the One Monstrous Feast anthology, which was anthology monster romance, which was the first actually time that Nyx Coronado was printed. So thank you, Britta.
I loved your story so much. It's great.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm Samantha Bryant, and I don't write monster romance so far. I'm a multi-genre gal, though. I write my best-known series is my menopausal superheroes. Most recently, I've done some Gen X romances. Those are not speculative fiction at all, though. They're just straight contemporary romance. And I write a whole lot of horror, usually short. But I do love to read some monster smut. So, I thought we've kind of defined a little bit. So, is it just that there's a monster in it? What makes it a monster romance? And I'll let anybody who wants to go first. Mel.
Actually, actually talked about this last night with somebody. So there's a fine line because, and it depends on where you come down on this on. Everybody just, if it's a monster uh, in the story and there's a romance between that character and another character, usually human, then it's a monster romance. Um, Other people like to say it's if they have a monstrous characteristic they can't get rid of, so then shifters are excluded from monster romance, kind of, or shifters are a gray area. So I think it really depends on where you come down on how monstrous you want your monsters. Like, they have to have horns and tail and teeth and claws, or they can shift in and out of that. But yeah, some element of a character has to be monstrous, as far as I know. No, that's my definition.
Anybody got a different take or want to agree?
Well, I think that the romance part can't be understated. Like, yes, there's some monsters, what one is assuming, but when I first was published, I had a publisher who really didn't understand what I was writing, and they said, "Oh, well, you have, X number of sex scenes in your book, ergo, it is a romance." And they marketed me as paranormal romance. My books are not romances. They do not follow the order of a romance. It's not about a happily ever after, at least a happily for now. There isn't. It's not the story of a relationship. And wow, you can get readers very grumpy if they bought what they thought was a romance, and then it turns out that it is not a romance. It's just a dark fantasy with some bonking in it. So um, I think when you are marketing a monster romance, you need, as a writer, you can't just say, "Oh, there's monsters here." There absolutely has to be the elements of the romance as well as the monsters who are doing the romancing.
I think that's fair. I could see how you would see a lot of scrutiny if that was not the case. So I think that's really fair.
I actually had someone write to me and tell me I had written my book wrong and gave me tips on how to rewrite it so that it was a proper romance. And I was
Well, if
like,
you were
"Oh,
trying to write a romance, that might have been helpful.
yeah, that would have been great." So instead, I just left that publisher and remarketed my books as not romances, and that helped a lot.
Smart. Mhm.
Britta, do you have any thoughts about defining the genre?
No, I mean everybody nailed it to Raven's point. The romance bit is super important if you're calling it a monster romance. Ask me how I know. But but yeah, no, I think that's it. And I like the call out about the shifting versus like a monstrous element that they can or cannot get rid of, because it comes up frequently in discussions that I'm in. Are mer people who can shift, are they considered monstrous? Are vampires considered monsters? And like the kind of consensus that we come to there is, okay, are they doing the horizontal limbo in and out of the form? Like, are we getting a shifted Congress, or are we getting a non-shifted Congress? Like, how is it? So it's like if Ariel and Eric are only hanging out on land having fun, that's a paranormal romance. But if Eric's going under the water, if he's seeing what's under the sea with Ariel, that's a monster romance. And you can have both, but the monsters bit needs to have a little conga.
I love all the euphemisms we're all coming up with here. These are great.
So far.
Well, I know as a reader, I've read books that have been described as monster romance, and I think that's exactly right. They're a romance, and one of the people falling in love is a monster by a definition that works for me of monster, right? And then there's also because I also write horror. On the horror side, you'll see what they're now calling cozy horror, and a lot of
Mhm.
times that's a horror story with romance, often between the scary thing and the, I don't know, the other character, whatever they are. So it's interesting. I think, it's like, where did you start when you came in to whether you would call this a cozy horror or a monster romance? But really reading them, they feel like very close to the same thing to me. So, let's jump in with why you write it. So all of you are to some extent writing monster romance. So why that genre? What do you like about it?
Um, I I really love the creative what if aspect of it. Like I feel like so read like of everyone I've read, like, okay, so Minotaurs are having a moment, and no one is handling them the same way. Everyone is taking their own spin on either the Greek myth or on how a Minotaur would function in modern society or how a Minotaur would fit into a certain field. And I just find it so fascinating. And so when I'm settling into, okay, I'm going to write this sort of monster, I love asking those what ifs that we do as authors, anyways, but then applying this extra level of like, okay, like I'll use my fawn for example. I was like, okay, well, let me think about deer anatomy. How would that translate to a humanoid, half deer, half human creature, a fawn? And what similarities and differences would there be between the fawn and their human lover? Like, where are the more sensitive, ticklish zones, the more interesting areas to play with? In monster romance, there's always kind of like a fun bit of anatomy that we're working with. How would that apply from a deer to a humanoid deer? And I just think it's a really fun thought project. And then applying that and then working it into the plot and the world to where it's like, this is normal for these characters. It's not, we kind of like, I was going deep in the internet wormhole about male cervidae and their stomachs the other day, and they have bigger mouths than their female counterparts. Do with that what you will. And I just like went down this little spiral, and then suddenly I had a character and a plot, and it all just came from like how are male deer different than female deer anatomically outside of like the obvious factors. So like just looking at okay, their chambers of their stomach are different. And then I had a whole plot at the end of it just by following that what if creative spiral. And it feeds the author. Like I just like it. My brain tickles happily when I figure it out. So
No, you
that's the
definitely
one.
made that sound like fun. How about you, Raven? Why do you like this?
Um, well, with vampires, one sort of doesn't really have I mean, there are vampire stories that aren't sexual in this world, but vampires are the sex monster. Like they have, or, perhaps they weren't in the very beginning, the earliest vampire myths, but thanks to the Victorians, they are the monster through whom we explore our fears about sex and STDs and uh, that kind of that level, that sexual darkness. So uh, I didn't actually intend to be writing this series. I had intended on writing science fiction, but one night I dreamed a scene from it and I wrote it down, and then it kept going, and next thing you know, I'm 7 books in. So uh I hadn't actually thought about putting sex scenes into my stories until suddenly I was there. There it was, there was vampires, and nope, we got to do the vampire thing. They're going to be drinking blood, and for me, uh, so my vampires call themselves the Ammer, and they're not exactly like other vampires. I did what I call the build a vampire workshop, where I went through all the myths and picked what I liked, and then tried to make it work. Like BL Brown, working the science of it into the storyline and propelling the story actually through that. And so my Ammer really don't like to eat without fornicating. Um, they they can, in an emergency, but they'd really rather have both at the same time. It just enhances the experience. So that really shapes their entire life,
That would
so
make dinner time a little more interesting.
yes, dinner and a show. I like to joke. You can have dinner without the show, but it's so much better. So yeah. Because of the monster that I don't know, I chose or it chose me. I'm kind of stuck writing the romantic aspects of it.
Stephanie, how about you? What draws you to writing monster romance?
I like writing monster romance mostly because I am particularly attracted to stories that have magic in any form. And what are monsters other than magical people, So I think that element of it is what particularly attracts me. I want to see, what are the aspects of romance between humans and non-humans, and what are maybe some of those like magical elements that might impact the romance as well.
Yeah, I can see where that would be fun too. How about you, Mel?
So, I actually answered this on another panel. It's my point of view is that monsters are inherently queer, and so when I'm writing a story, especially a queer, I mean, all of mine are some flavor of queer monster story, along with the urban fantasy. But the for me, it's trying to find a way to tell a story that's interesting and also build empathy through different types of world building and character building and monster building. Because I feel like monsters tap into that other pretty easily. And when you look at aspects of monster romance, I don't know that it does. For me, it doesn't matter like what the pairing is. It still inherently has that queerness to it, which is why I enjoy them so much. So
Oh, it makes sense. I mean, what's more other than a monster? And yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's I know we've seen a lot of different I mean vampires have been very sexualized since like their first moment on the screen and the earliest one I've read is Carmilla,
Mhm.
Sheridan something
The
French.
Fanu.
Yeah, thank you.
Fanu. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's a sexy book.
Yep.
And so we're very accustomed to vampires being sexy. And it's been interesting to me to see what other kinds of monsters end up being sexualized, like, the Shape of Water. I would not have
Mhm.
expected the Gill Man to be sexy, but dang, wasn't he? And and then on shows like Penny Dreadful and
Mhm.
the Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, we're seeing the Frankenstein monster, become a little bit more sexualized. So are there monsters you especially love to see, or ones that you're thinking are maybe we've had enough of that?
I might have written one that I'm in the, I have had this weird mood, and I like to do strange things sometimes with my characters. Um, and I have a book that's literally a novella that's literally called "My Sentient Parasite is Infatuated with a Vampire."
Amazing.
And the Fae has a parasite he got because of part of the world building again. In my world, the Fae can travel via ley lines. They call them tunnels. And there are things that live in the tunnels. So you want to expedite your travel through the tunnels very quickly. And this poor Fae got stuck at one point, and because of his actual Fae ability, which is to regenerate fairly quickly from wounds, the parasite couldn't actually kill him, so they got kind of conjoined, and had been that way for a long time. Um, and the Fae had kept it a secret until one night they're trying to deal with an emergency from one of their vampire clients, and things happen from there. Besides the fact that the parasite talks to him all the time and has an infatuation with the vampire, and so yeah,
You've
and
just
it was
sold
a
me on this story. I'm ready to read it.
Yeah.
it's a quick read. It's like I think 70 or 80 pages.
Amazing.
It's a novella size. So yeah, it's funny because I always get a chuckle. People see the title and they always get a chuckle out of it. But I could tell when people are really daring, and I'm like, it is definitely an homage to like the Chuck Tingle, Kimberly Lemming
Hmm.
style of not only titles but storytelling. And I like being out there kind of on the raggedy edge of some stuff. I still write vampires. I still write merfolk and dragons. I mean, dragons is like probably the most common monster in all of monster romance, I think, maybe besides demons, and I'm writing one of those. So I like to be out there a little bit with, sometimes being, especially in the novellas, I could take a little bit more of a chance and do something weird, and some
Yeah,
people are
and
going to
you
get it.
you definitely surprised me with Parasite. I was not expecting that. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really taking like that body horror, kind of that edge of horror, monster romance and horror romance, and playing with it too.
Hmm. How about you, Raven? Do you have one you love to see or you're getting tired of seeing?
Well, it's funny because it's recently, as I've been doing conventions, people think it's super witty to come up to me and be like, "Oh, vampires are undead or dead," and then I respond by saying, "Oh, well, actually, they are undead." But oh, the vampire genre is just so over. Oh, there's too many stories about them, and I'm like, but people keep so but it's so I have been having to have a lot of discussions where I say vampires aren't over. So I feel like there's a certain some type of people are just feeling, they've had enough vampires, they've been done to death or undeath. And I I'm not getting tired of them myself because I'm writing some very different ones, and I think that there's so much left to do with vampires, but I'm, a little biased by this point in time. I myself, for just, fun stuff, am a tentacle galley. So, not a lot of tentacles in my series, but, maybe someday in the future, I'll get to fully explore that because, there certainly are plenty of tentacle-y romances out there, but I haven't been able to play in that wavy little world. So
Oh, I hate that people are being obnoxious at conventions about it, thinking they're being witty. But
yeah.
it's, vampires and romances have been around a long time, but that's not to say that they can't be done differently. Every story has the potential.
I
Okay.
actually would back up what Raven is saying. Like a lot of people will comment that vampires are over, but then you actually see what's being read in monstrous romance, and vampires are here to stay. Also, they say that monster stories about vampires tend to grow during recessions. So I
Oh
feel
boy.
like, yeah. Like they're not really going anywhere at the moment. I will never say no to a great romance about vampires as, evidenced by my Dampier story. I want to see it. I am happy with all of the different variations of monster stories that can be told. So, like, if someone wants to tell an off-the-wall monster story, like, I'm here for it. I will accept all of them, please. Yes.
How about you, Britta?
I think like again, kind of like growing on what Stephanie and Raven both said, like it's easy to get a sense of like market overwhelm of a certain like genre, subgenre, or monster in it. And like I know ML and I have both written mermen in our stories. Stephanie's done dragons. We get a lot of dragons. They're both writing vampires. I have like Yeti type Sasquatch characters in my camp cryptid. I have wolf shifters, and it's you can look at and see like, oh gosh, there's vampires are dead, mermaids are drowning. Like, let's do something creative. It's like, well, it's there. It's someone's writing it. There's a group of them. Like the Minotaur's like uptick didn't come out of nowhere. It's always been there. And then we're just seeing like, okay, like somebody did one and it picked up, and other authors were like, oh, I have that too. So I think it's really fun to kind of like build on that. Like the sense of market overwhelm is real, but someone's already doing the next big thing and they're not alone. And so in 6 months, everyone might be like, okay, we get it. Horns, he's big, she's big, they're muscular. Okay, what's next? But that next thing is already there's already a full backlist of it, and it's just kind of as people move. There is somebody who does market research was recently talking about how fawn and satyr there's not a lot out there, and I jokingly pinged in their DMs. I was like, get out of my work in progress folder, and they left. They said it's you and two other authors that keep popping up doing it, and I was like, here's five more. Like we're here. Like this guy, he's that way. He's like a rabbit person, and that idea came to me 4 years ago from Dahlia Davies' Railed by the Easter Bunny. And I was like, rabbit people, that's cool. And Rasselbach, I'm German, let's do him, like, and do him. But it all kind of builds. So I'm never tired of seeing someone on that note writing from their own culture and pulling up a figure of folklore or monstrous legend in their culture. Like I write German, and like in my Camp Cryptid world, the fawn are Greek. I have Greek family members, so I pull off of that. So that's like my favorite thing to see is when someone is pulling from their own family history, their own culture to do something new with monster romance, even though they're not the only one doing it, but they're putting it out there in a way that feels fresh and exciting to open that door for others.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I'm not tired of vampires yet either. I
I love
I
them.
still enjoy all of it.
If
So,
people are tired of vampires, then like look at the coverage Lestat's concert got.
Yeah.
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 God, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say what we find is some people are tired of vampires, but you know what? That's great. They can read some of these other monster smut stories and have a great time. They don't have to be vampires. Um, there's a monster for all of us. So since you guys are all writing monster romance, I wonder if you find there are special challenges with monster romance as opposed to any other kind of romance that you might have written previously. Thoughtful faces. I'll give you a moment. Anybody got an opening thought? I know it's a little rough one, so I want to give you a second to think.
I can roll with it.
All right, let's hear it,
Um,
Raven.
uh, so I don't want to shy away from the fact that my vampires are drinking blood while they are, I've just run out of synonyms for the act of sexual congress. Um, but um, I decided to just really go in with that. And I actually have my vampires ejaculating blood. And um, yeah, some people are not ready for that. And people are like, oh, that's so gross, and oh, this and that. And it's like, well, like I built up a biology for the Ammer, and the only thing they have circulating in their body for fluids is blood. Why would they even need another fluid since they can't, they're undead and they're not going to be impregnating anyone anytime soon. So it makes, I worked with a biologist from Johns Hopkins, and we came up with like a whole system for them. And so it
Oh,
makes,
wow.
and so for me, it's like, well, it makes sense scientifically, so let's put it in. But there are definitely people who are more on the squeamish side. And when I start detailing the act of blood drinking, and then going further with it, there are people that just dip out and DNF me on their Goodreads pages.
But there are
And
also other people who are like, I'm so here for this.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I adore them and I appreciate them very much. But yeah, with when you're writing vampires, like I don't want to write vampires that are not horrific. I feel that vampires, in particular, have been sort of demonstered, in sparkly sorts of ways, shall we say. And I'm here to undo that. Like, I these are monstrous creatures. They have monstrous urges, and they're doing monstrous things out in the world. And even though you can fall in love with them and have a fun time with them, and in my world survive that. Um, that doesn't mean to say that these are not monsters, and you should be concerned. Go into it, just not like, oh, just a little one night stand. This is no problem. A problem for me has been like just the way people come to the stories who maybe don't read vampire stuff all the time or are not excited about the monstrous aspects of them. And then when I'm real with it, they're there's some pearl clutching. um I I made my character think about the fact that she was having unsafe sex, and I should have never done that, because now in a whole bunch of reviews people are like, she's not having safer sex, and they would have never ever thought of this thing if I hadn't had her thinking about it. But like, it's something I would have thought about. So I had, my main character thinking about it. Like, oh, yeah, we haven't gone down to the STD clinic and gotten tested. And here we are sharing blood. And maybe that's not the finest idea. But oh, what the hell? Let's go through with it. It was a moment. So yeah, now I've had a number of reviews where people are like, oh, well, this is unsafe sex. And it's just like, yes, these
Well,
are
I mean,
vampires.
they are having
We're
sex with a monster. That's
Yeah,
kind
they're
of
having sex with a
inherently
monster.
unsafe.
Like, yeah. The question is like, are they going to survive the thing? Never mind, like, can they pick up like vampire herpes? Like, it's just like, there's a there are some downsides to writing vampires, is what I'm saying.
Right. How about you, Britta? Have you run into any special challenges with monster in particular romance?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty similar to that. Like early on, I had to decide like how normative I wanted the worlds to be in different ways. And so like Camp Cryptid, there are conversations about queerness, there are conversations about otherness because in that world, like the monsters fell down from their earth, like their world. They call it otherworld. So there are those conversations there, but the camp itself is normative. Like, oh, you're a monster, great. You're like you're a Naga, okay, you're on the outside of the marching line, and like, oh, you're a gnome, go sit on his shoulders, and everything's just like, all right, let's go. And so like that, like once I made that decision, it kind of erased a lot of other like mental blocks I have because like the way my brain works, sometimes I'm like, well, why would this person who's never seen monstrous beings before immediately fall in love with someone? And so it was like the romance hurdle. So I was like, okay, remove that. Like you see a fawn who's just fallen down a mountainside and they're really cute. That's the thought process. So like that really helped. And so then in that on the blood thing, it's the anatomy. Like like when you're like with the fawn, you know, they have hooves on their feet. Do they have tiny hooves on their fingers? Do they have hoof hands? Do they take off their hooves and do the adventure time thing? Like, what is their actual anatomy and how does it work? So it's always, I get hung up on that every time. Like I was writing with the wolf shifter, I'm like, okay, well, I think he'd have a good sense of smell at all times. He'd be able to like smell his mate somewhere. But like, does he half shift or full shift? Is he in control when he half shifts? It's hot when he half shifts, but like, does she want him getting a full nose full while he's half shifted? Like, what's the line here? And then if he is getting a full nose full, like the texture of the nose changes, and we're in her POV for this chapter. So, and it's I get in these like doom spirals of how far am I going to take the anatomy before it just becomes something else entirely. And that's what beta readers are for.
Yeah.
So thanks.
How about you, Stephanie? Any special challenges you've run into?
I think similar to what has already been said, there are like reader conceptions or misconceptions that you sometimes have to deal with or consider. With vampire writing, I was considering for a long time, like, would a vampire be interested in a female partner's menstrual blood versus vein blood, right? So things like that. Or when I had beta readers reading my dragon story, they were asking, like, how does the female dragon feel about these things? And it's like, well, this is a monster who's been around for several hundred years. So maybe her dragon senses are more analytical versus emotional, you know? And so there are things like that that are particular challenges to writing it. And I think when you're putting those stories together, the challenge is like, am I still just going to tell the story that I want to tell? Or am I going to worry about what people are, thinking about when they're reading my story? So that challenge can be very unique to writing monster romance.
Yeah, keeping the naysayers in their box while you're still busy trying to write it. How
Yeah.
about you, Mel? What have you run across?
So I like to base a lot of the mythical creatures I write in science, biology, even world settings. Like my dragons, I like to say, like, very shorthanded, that they're basically big lizard chickens. And even though they shift, like, you know, okay, so they're shifters, then how do you justify like a dragon that's the size of an elephant or a little bit larger into a human form? Like, and it's like, okay, well, science is great, but magic is faster. So, so their bipedal form is, what they make it. It's part biological and part magic. So then, they'll have similarities to their parents, but then they'll have their own expression of gender and anatomy and things like that, after they hatch, for example. And a lot of that is explained in the book. And then I lean into it because dragons, in my universe, are both, like, if they're in their dragon form, they have both anatomy. They might go by a particular gender marker, like male, female, whatever, or them, or all of the above, and but it purposefully, because dragons don't mate very well. They mate actually they're made a lot, but they don't have offspring very often. Um, it, Dragons are just dragons. Like and when they're in that form, there is no like gender to them. They're just kind of like we're just trying to, it's a holdover from trying to hide among the humans and mages and everything else that has two legs. So, but yeah, so, the way their biology works and the fact that they go through a cycle where they produce one kind of gamete, and then they have a year where they produce, in every 25 years they produce an egg, and then that puts them in what is the equivalent of a heat, but I don't quite call it that. And then I like playing with pheromones. I gave the dragons like a pheromone addiction. So if you're like more like in the beginning when you're first with your partner, if you have exchanged pheromones, that's another euphemism. You end up being addicted to that person, and that person can't be more than a few more than an hour or two away. Like you can separate for a little bit, but you have to be together longer to be like away from each other longer. And there's loopholes to that, but in the beginning, you're pretty much like glued at the hip because you're constantly trying to figure out like how things are supposed to work. The other thing I did with the dragons, instead of having them, because a lot of shifters will have like a heightened sense of smell. And there's a joke in one of the books they're doing investigation. Dragons have a heightened sense of smell for emotions and pheromones, so they can tell when someone's afraid or when someone is sad or when someone's happy. They can't necessarily, be trace blood in, like they don't have that capability. So there's actually a joke that's like they're investigating something and there's this blood trail, and his partner, and also like in the process of putting these two characters together is like, well, why can't you figure out where they went? And he's like, I'm not a bloodhound. Like it's like, I'm a dragon, not a bloodhound. So it's very much like little hints like that in the world building that kind of layer it. So immediately, dragons can't go sniffing after blood. They're not very good at it. Can they smell blood? Sure, but can they follow a trail? Not really. But then you also got like in that one couple of sentences, oh, hey, okay, so if they're were shifters in this, they probably can, right? So there's a lot of, I like cool layering where it's an offhanded remark. With my vampires, it's a virus, a symbiotic virus. So if you get infected, it basically freezes you or slows everything down, and that's why you live like a really long time. And you have to survive on blood and water. Like water is really important. And so so the vampires are constantly dealing with trying to remain hydrated, and then the main character gets thrown for a loop when she finds out she's actually a mutated vampire. She has a mutated version of the virus that a necromancer child has figured out how to take advantage of, which is really shitty. So so they so it's playing with what's already there, and then just twisting it by a degree and figuring out what would be interesting to read. And a lot of times it's like, what would I be interested in reading? And for the Merfolk book, I studied a lot about the Gulf and water mechanics and boats and sizes of boats and what different mammals were located in the Gulf of Mexico and fish and things like that. And then also discovering, like, how do you tell time if you're so deep that you can't really see sunlight anymore? Stuff like that. It was like, how would you tell time? So it turns out that the Gulf of Mexico is one of the only places in the world that has two tides. And they're on, if you're deep enough, you're on a 26.5 hour day instead of the normal 24, because that's literally the tide shift is about every 16 hours. So
So I've
it's
got to
kind of
say, I love how for all of you, there's so much like geeky, sciency interest that goes into that. It's like I'm not sure that people reading monster romance necessarily realize how much the authors are deep into the science and thinking about the anatomy and how this will specifically work in their world and the world building and everything. And I'm really excited hearing about it, all of it. I now have to go read more of your books.
Okay,
So,
Samantha, thank you for asking that question because I feel like so not alone right now. Like,
right? It was all of you when you talked about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all science geeks. I love them. So, one question that one of you sent in, I actually don't remember which one of you it is, so I don't mean to call you out, but one of you asked, are there any monsters that you don't think should be sexualized? Are there any that, you don't see working in a monster romance? And if so, why?
Um, can I?
Yeah, go
Because
for it.
it comes up time and time again, and I think every time that question gets asked, it needs to be led with, if you've been asked not to write it, don't do it. You're not going to do it better than anyone. You're not going to be the special case. If there is a subset of people, if there is a culture of people, if anyone has said, do not do this thing, you should not do it. And that's kind of like the main one. And but in there, because it's as we've all talked about, we all have our own different spins on mermaids and dragons, and we all have our own monsters, and you can make up a new monster. But if there are any on that board where anyone has said, do not do this, don't do it.
Like if it's sacred to
Find
someone,
something
you're,
else. Roll the
yeah,
d20 on a monster list and write that one instead. Like,
yep.
I think that's the most comprehensive answer to that question. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it gets better than that. Like the monsters that one shouldn't be writing are ones that are too far from your own lived experience, and you couldn't handle them, like with the delicacy and sensitivity and understanding. And if you go ahead with that, you deserve whatever's coming down in
yeah.
social media onto you. But I think, you know, writing there's so many monsters out there that it's not hard to find a monster that you can play with and make your own. But yeah, I think there are plenty of monsters that you should be like, that is fascinating, and yet no, I will not
Hmm.
touch that.
Yeah.
At least not in a sexual capacity. Like maybe it's something that you can
Yeah.
explore in a different way, and you have, the proper amount of sensitivity editors and, stuff like that. But on a sexual level, that is no, no. You know.
well, I think you shut everybody down. Britta, you answered it too thoroughly.
Sorry. It comes up so often, and there's always someone that's like, "Well, what if I did it this way?" And we're like, "No, it's been said, it's been asked very politely. It's now being demanded. Like these do not belong to you. These stories do not belong to you.
Hmm.
Find something else." And like I think what's fascinating about like monsters that we find in our own world, like dragons, those are dinosaur bones. That's how that story came into being. Unicorns were horses that had the same kind of like lupus-like growth that Rasselbach and Jackalope stemmed from in folklore. And so you can take something like that. If you really want to write a deer-headed creature, go look into Irish and Scottish lore. There are so many. There's the white stag of the woods, and that's not an area where people are going to tell me, be like, oh yeah, no, Brittany, you can't write Scottish and German stuff. And be like, really? That's life. But like, and that's what I'm gonna write. But if you're gonna write a water beast, like make sure you're writing it respectfully. If you're gonna sexualize a water beast, there are many around the world that should not be touched
Hmm.
because they are important to cultures that you don't understand and you can't understand because it's not lived. And then there's other ones that's like, okay, like Nessie. Nessie was a photograph of either a log or a whale that got stuck in there and was having a great time with his appendage. Like, we can write about Nessie. He's a modern creation,
So
sexualized
have any of you
Nessie,
written
but
about Nessie? Can I get that one?
No, but I really do like Aaron Hawke's Ockness. That one's fantastic.
Uh,
Real drop. I love that book so much.
So that leads me into my next question, which, besides your own books, which obviously all of our listeners should run out and buy and read all of them, who else do you recommend? Like, who are you reading in monster romance and think that other people should read? So I'll toss one out there. Like I said, I came in as a horror writer, and so I've also found the cozy horror, which is kind of the same as monster romance, but it leans into the horror a little more. And I found
Mm.
one I really loved a few months ago called Someone You Can Build a Nest In. You guys seen this one? John, oh dear, my handwriting's bad. I think it says Wiswell, John Wiswell.
Mhm.
And yeah, I really loved that one in part because somebody was talking about how you can make up your own monster. I kept in a lot of monster romances, I'm kind of waiting for the moment where I find out what familiar monster this monster is, right? I'm waiting for the reveal. And I didn't get that one in this one because I'm not familiar with this monster. So it's either something I've never seen before, it's never given a name. You never go, oh, that's a jackalope, right? You never, it's just the creature. And it was really creative, and the darkness and the love story was just perfect. I loved it.
One of my favorite series is the Monstrous series by Lily Mayne. It's basically a MM romance series, and in each book, she has a different monster that's introduced. So as you go down, there's one, I think book three, I want to say, is the Reek. And maybe book five or six is a Mothman type character. So I very much have enjoyed reading some of those in her series.
That sounds like fun. Yeah.
I haven't been I've been doing so much research for my work in progress that I've been reading just mostly nonfiction. But when I was growing up, there was a story that really set me in the direction of monstrous romance. Um, uh, some of you have probably read the Dark is Rising series by Susan Cooper,
Mm.
and she also did one called Seaward, which is just a fantastic fantasy story based on Celtic myth. But in the story, there is this huge snake monster, and the female character gets sort of pulled off into this alternate space with the snake monster coiling around her. And my like teenage self was just kind of like, oh, okay. And nothing explicit happens in this story, but my imagination was set afire. Um, and so sometimes you can actually find the monstrous romance hits in books where authors didn't actually or intend for that to be there. But or maybe it was like in kind of like a little thing in the back of their head and it snuck through. But there's you know if there's a monster in a story, I can probably find a way to uh, think of my own, get my own feelings for it. And I think that's actually one of the really great things about monsters.
So relatable.
Yeah.
Brett or Mel, did either of you come up with somebody to suggest?
I absolutely loved Katie Roberts' monster romances, and it was like she went down all they went down all the typical um, monsters, because you had everything from a dragon to a succubus to demon to a kraken, and kind of showed how different each one of those were, all set in the same world set, and it was a really really good series. I really enjoyed that series.
I think I've read a short story by her. One of the ways that I fell into monster romance is I got an Amazon Audible series of short stories. It was called Scared Sexy. Oh, it was so much fun. But Katie Robert had a story in that one called Beautiful Nightmare. And that was on my list of, things that I loved.
Nice.
Mine, like, so at my first like adult monster romance reader a couple years ago, when I was thinking about like, oh, I like this, I need to read in the genre and write in the genre, was Dahlia Davies. If she writes it, I'll read it. Fantastic work and really creative work. The Petalfall series is really fun with like more dryads and centaurs going on. But Grace Draven is someone that I go back to time and time again, just due to like creativity, the world building, a real focus on like history and science and building really fleshed out stuff. But in Radiance, where it's basically like a drow and a human, I was like, oh, my D&D brain is on fire. I love this. There's so many moments, and I go back to this like in my own writing where I think about like, what does the human look like to the monster? And the way that the love interest is so disgusted by her at first. He's like her pink, fleshy, soft bits and her white blunt teeth. And like he's so put off by everything about this woman. And when we as humans are reading it, we're like, she's a curvy, like beautifully like built redheaded woman. She's a princess or like everything about her. And then he's just like, oh, she's terrible. She doesn't even have sharp teeth. How does she survive? Like I love this. And so I
Where are
think
her
about that.
scales?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what do you mean you're awake in the sunlight? Yeah, doesn't the sun hurt your eyes? And she's like, no, my eyes are normal. And he's like, what is normal? And I love that. Like, so Grace Raven's Radiance and Eidolon, and then she has a merman one, and I'm blanking on the name of it, but the whole reason I even started reading her is because the female love interest in the merman book has my name, and I never see my name in books. And so it was just such a trip to read about a woman railing a merman with my name. And I was like, yeah, this is this is gonna be a good time.
Oh, those are great. Now my TBR is even longer. Thank you.
Actually, since you said I'll read anything she writes, you made me think of Paulette Kennedy, who I will read any book that comes out by her. And she just recently did The Artist of Blackberry Grange, which has an evil, sexy ghost. And oh yeah, he's perfect. I mean, full on Lasher energy. And yeah. You want
Talking
this?
about
It's
the snake monster in the void, Lasher and me, and when I was 13, I'm like, I shouldn't be reading this.
yes.
Nope.
I think unsupervised early reading is a great explanation for who I am today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, our listeners at Write Hive are all people who are writing, and so they would probably love to hear a little bit of advice. So, if you can think, like if you're talking to somebody who would like to try writing monster romance, is there one piece of advice you would give them?
Start with an easy monster. You don't necessarily have
Like a
to make
very
it the one you're
familiar
going to
one,
publish. Yeah, just something to get your feet wet. I was talking to
As it
another
were.
so
author.
the Gill Man
Huh?
then.
Yeah, I mean, classic, Swamp Man, the Gill Man, the vampire, Frankenstein. A lot of those, like, classic monsters, uh, whether you're going to publish it or not, like, I feel that gives, like, a really first good, because there's a lot out there to kind of take in and mix and match and uh, go from and build your own version of, but not feel like you're going way off the page and struggling with building a concept or a character. Like there's a lot of vampire character archetypes, hundreds of years worth that kind of you can borrow from, even queer. Like, yeah, I mean, everybody I tell that I write bisexual polyamory vampires, they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like they're around for a long time. Why wouldn't they be?
Mhm.
But I mean, even the first Camille, the original one, um, was leaned very queer. It was very sapphic, right? So that I mean, there's a lot there to play with, and so I feel like if you take some of the classic monsters and try to write one of those first, even if you don't necessarily get very far with it, it's the idea of like getting in and putting things on the page in that mode and seeing where it goes. Um, and then because that's where I started with dragons, vampires, and then and then it went from there. I feel like um, those things are fairly well accepted, fairly well established in monster romance, and then you can get weird with it, right? Like so, it like nobody quite thinks of a like Dune as a monster romance, but it really is. Once you get into the couple of books, like you have a 3,000-year-old worm god, and it's like, oh, okay, like there's a lot of things going on that I probably shouldn't have read at 16, but it's a different time too. Like there's a lot of things you can take from science fiction, and horror, and add a romantic spin to it. So I think the harder part isn't the monster part, but it's actually the romance part, maybe.
My suggestion would be to write what you would want to read personally and maybe let go of your inhibitions if you're worried about the story that you want to tell. Like if it's a story that you personally would want to read, then write it.
Oh, that's lovely. And really, that's a good argument for writing any book. Yeah. How about you, Britta?
I would say like don't worry about we talked about this earlier. Don't worry about overwhelm of market. Don't be like, oh, there's so many. I have an idea for a billionaire monster romance, but there's so many. Do it. Do it. If it's something that you're comfortable writing, if it's something that you feel like your voice is strong in, like a lot of monster romance is just taking several very different things and putting them together into one thing. You can have a werewolf shifter vampire billionaire romance on the moon. Who's stopping you? Like if those are your things that are comfortable, do that. Like lean into it. It's such a fun grab bag in monster romance because we have the whole world of romance tropes and subgenres to deal with. And then you can just like, start with your easy monster, grab your archetypical like love interest. And then, okay, so you really like writing street racing romance novels. Okay, make one of them a like Roadrunner shifter. And the other one's a coyote. There you go. Pitch that. Looney Tunes monster romance.
I'm there. Write it for me, please. But yeah, I think two people do look at that market saturation thing, and I'm like, honey, you're still writing the book. By the time you are done writing the book, have been through edits, and are actually ready to publish, trends will have completely changed, and whatever saturation we had, will be saturated with something else by then.
And whatever is like the big hot thing right now isn't reflective of every reader. Someone is just then reading their first subgenre romance and they're like, oh, and I want, oh, a Bat Boy bartender romance? Like that's really cool to me. Like I want to read that, even though like maybe it came out 10 years ago. They're still gonna read it.
Yeah, books have a long shelf life. Haha.
Yeah.
How about a piece of advice from you, Raven?
Yeah, I think digging in on the romance level, like decide what chili pepper level you're comfortable writing, because there are different levels of romances. There you can go from closed door to full smut, and that's something that you're going to have to be comfortable with as a writer. So go through, read some different heat levels, and see where you're at, because I mean, especially when you're doing monster romances, things are gonna just get real weird in the bedroom, and or whatever environment your monster exists in. And so you have to be kind of ready for that, and you also have to be ready for people to read it. And if you write this incredibly hot, smuttiest thing ever with like, tentacles and multiple phalluses and things you can't even explain in the English language, and they're all going into places, and then you get done with it and you're like, well, I'm never publishing that. Like nobody, I do not need, I no one ever needs to see this side of me. I mean, it's great that you wrote that, and I'm glad you've had that experience writing it, but if you're looking to publish a book, and you're looking to publish a romance book, figure out what spice level you are comfortable with and then write to that.
Right, and it's okay to tell your mom she just can't read this one.
Yes.
Yeah. You can write something else for mom later.
Yes.
When I was putting out the Dampier's Acolyte and I was looking for readers, my mom asked if she could read it, and I said, just so you know, it's a little bit smutty. And she was like, well, a little smut is good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Mom. Love it.
Good supportive mom. I love it. So, believe it or not, we've been talking for about an hour, and so it is time to wind things up. So let's just go around one more time, remind people who you are, what you write, and where they can find you online or in general. So let's start with Stephanie this time, and I'll go around and have you all say goodbye.
Sounds good. My name is Stefanie Contreras. I do write romance under Nix Coronado, my pen name. And so you can find Nix Coronado on Instagram, Nix_Coronado. For all of my stories, I also am on TikTok, Instagram, and my website are Latina Geek Girl.
All right. How about you, Mel?
ML Eden. You can find me at mleden.com, and I'm published wide. My next release is the Demon's Thief, which is a very, very interesting four different monster types ending up in a polycule together. So I write a little bit of everything. And again, you can find all that information and more on my website, including links to my socials and everything. But you can generally find me as ML Eden across the interwebs.
Excellent. How about you, Britta?
I'm BL Brown, and I can be found at BrittaWritesThings.com or on Instagram at BrittaWritesThings or on Threads, which suspended me for a 2-star pure erotica review of this book. So on there, I am Britta Writes Stuff. You're just keeping it in line. And I write German folklore and fairy tale, cozy romantasy, high spice, and I do monster romance that is also cozy, happily ever afters, interconnected, high spice. And I'm generally a nuisance on TikTok and super awkward, so please follow me and feel free to laugh in the comments at Britta Writes Things.
And how about you, Raven?
I am Raven Belasco. You can find me at ravenbelas.co or on any of the social medias. Just on, look for Raven Belasco. I write the Blood and Ancient Scrolls series, which is cross-genre for horror, historical action adventure, and I like to say drizzled in spicy vampire sauce. And I just want to say that I now wish that this was not a virtual con, because I just want to take you guys all down to the bar and keep this conversation going for hours.
Agree.
And I've been your moderator. I'm Samantha Bryant, and I'm a multi-genre writer, who so far does not write monster romance, unless the new story in It Ends With Her counts. I don't know. You'll have to read it and tell me. But you can find me and my work at my website, dangerouswindboard.com. So thank you for hanging out with us Oh boy, that was bad. Thanks for hanging out with us here at Write Hive. Someday I'll learn to talk. Thank you.